Hi, Jeanette.
Hi, Brian. Hi.
How are you?
I'm good. Thank you. How
Good.
are
So
you? Are we
I'm
in the
glad you
right?
found your way in.
Yeah, that's a very good question. Don't ask me again. I probably won't be able to find my way out.
I know. Well, we are both here now and live with an audience. It appears that Thea, who is in Uganda, is not
Right.
able to join. I do not know
Okay.
if there are technical issues or if she's
Yeah.
not able to join us. So I just wanted to let you know and everyone know. So for now, we will have a one-on-one fireside chat about female founders with
Fantastic.
one founder and no fire. But anyway, I'm
Mhm.
excited to talk to you today. I think we're going to learn a lot. Very briefly, introductions. My name is Brian Ellner, and I am an EVP at BCW, which is a global communications and marketing firm. But my background is in politics and issues advocacy. I spent 4.5 years working for another entrepreneur, Michael Bloomberg, who was a very successful one
Yeah.
back when he was mayor. And I then left his administration to run the campaign for marriage equality in New York, which we won in 2011, and then went on to work on that issue for the next 1.5 to 2 years, working with the Human Rights Campaign, both nationally in the United States and globally. At BCW, I spent a lot of time working with clients building impactful campaigns and have spent a lot of time working in the women's equality space. Built a campaign called 62 Million Girls with Michelle Obama to bring focus on the 62 million girls at the time around the world who were of school age, but unfortunately not in school because of discrimination and terror and other issues. I've worked with clients like the NBA and the WNBA around women's issues, and most recently worked with Diageo to bring 93 corporations out in support of the Equal Rights Amendment here in the United States, which has not yet passed, although it's been pending for almost 100 years. We're hoping the time is now. So that's me. Jeanette, why don't you tell everyone a little bit about your background and how you got to where you are right now?
Breathless. Fantastic, Brian. That's absolutely awesome. And to hear, guys like you that devoted so much of your time to this agenda is just absolutely fantastic. So, how to follow on from that? Let me try. So I guess I am probably what you might call a true Viking as much as anything else, with a Danish mother, a Swedish father, spent a lot of time in the Nordics, and also with a British family. So I have a dual passport, so almost 3 nationalities. So that's a great combination for this talk, and because of that, I've spent the last very, very many years, at the intersection of the Nordics and London, actually, but also with a lot of time in the US, having been a leader in IBM for very many years. So ran global businesses and so on, in media businesses in IBM, in London, for the US globally, and in the Nordics as well. So I kind of like to think I get the whole Nordic thing, I get the whole UK thing, and I also get the US thing. So I think the ability to work across cultures as much as this whole gender agenda and everything else is just really important. The adaptability and everything else. So by background, I'm an economist. Studied at UCL and London School of Economics in London, and kind of trot my baby steps in business as a PwC strategy consultant, and then sort of spent literally from early days onwards in the mobile tech space, in various boutiques, and in London, came back to PwC, got bought by IBM, came in through the back door, if you like, and like I just said, ran global European and UK businesses in IBM, and all the way through, kind of worked at the intersection of Nordic and UK tech, and from then onwards, just various other roles outside of IBM. But whilst I was at IBM, got extremely involved in what was the embryonic tech startup ecosystem in London, and very early on got connected with Ross Shaw, who ran or who set up actually London's Tech London advocates, grassroots ecosystem, let's call it movement, organization network, to kind of really help bring about the whole startup ecosystem in London. And so I got very involved in that, and I got involved in London's Tech City steering group, with Russ, and been an advisor to the UK government, and worked with the mayors of London. And I think there's still a book out there somewhere about how building a startup ecosystem in London and so on. And so, and again, all the way through playing ping pong between London, US, and the Nordics. And I think through all of that, all three of those actually, I think an important angle on this is I myself benefited from IBM's kind of women in tech, talent programs and all of that stuff, and got involved with Tech London Advocates, Women in Tech, and done a whole load of stuff in women in tech as a baby growing up in a highly male-dominated technology sector. And I was thinking about what I was going to say to you before we came on here, and I thought, actually, I'll tell you what I'm going to say. Here's one of the things I'm going to say. I breastfed on conference calls. I've negotiated deals in baby swimming classes in a bikini. I've been there, done that, kind of done all the challenges. And I think that you get to a point where you sort of think, you know what, some of this stuff can be passed on because it's not easy. It's not easy for anyone. But there are a couple of additional challenges just because, of our biology that, we have babies, us girls, some of us at least. And so that brings some challenges, and there are other challenges as well, and that's some of what we're going to talk about here. But so I've had a lot of experience in London's tech sector and in the Nordic tech sector as a young woman growing up in tech, and like I said, a highly male-dominated industry, and then subsequently as leader and taking a lot of women in tech under my own wings. And then about 5 or so years ago, having seen and having been part of, but having driven in London, the kind of women in tech movements and networks, I guess, you observe, wow, we can actually make a difference if we go about things the right way. And so 5 years ago, I set up Tech Nordic Advocates as the Nordic sibling of Tech London Advocates, and now the Nordic arm of Global Tech Advocates, which is actually the only global tech family in the world, of around 18 hubs around the world, and 15, 16, whatever, I run out of however many we are now, people from around the world. I set up the Tech Nordic Advocates ecosystem, which is all about supporting the growth of Nordic, Baltic as well, startup scale-ups and the whole ecosystem. And our women in tech community is an extremely important part of that. It's not all about women in tech. What it's about is about supporting startups, innovation, technology growth. And actually this agenda is very interesting because it's about women, and that's extremely important. But it's not all about women. We have to support anybody with talent, right? Yeah, so that's my background. And I have a lot of different roles in European Union advice and various other things, but we can come on to that. But it's all about women, I guess, right now. Yeah.
Well, you have extraordinary knowledge and experience in what we're here to talk about today, which is supporting women entrepreneurs in the tech space. So with that, I just want to throw out to the audience that there's a chat function. If there's a question you want to ask, please put it in the chat, and I will make sure that we get to it in our limited time. But I'm going to jump right into it and maybe start with a sort of a tough issue. I mean, you talked about the biology difference, right, and the challenges that take place in the workplace, not just in tech, obviously, but in tech and in entrepreneurship. Let me talk about something that's not biological. I'd love your sense on the global ramifications, because I only know about it in the United States. But as I've worked with clients who have wanted to support women entrepreneurs, one of the biggest issues they face has been access to capital. And you're also an economist. So in the United States, women make up approximately 11% of investing partners at VC firms, and only around 13% of venture capital dollars go to startups with a woman on the founding team. What's more shocking is the 30-year average of all female founders' share of VC funding is 2.4%, almost identical to the 2018 share of 2.3%, which is when the study is from. Nearly 3/4 of US VC firms did not have a single female investing partner. I'm wondering if you've seen the similar challenges, UK, in the Nordics, and what counsel you have. Oh, and
here's Thea.
we've been joined.
Thea. Hi, Thea.
Uganda's in the house.
Right. So
Welcome.
this, I think I was put in the wrong room or something naturally. So I was just out
We are
there.
really thrilled that you found us, and we're going to get to introducing you in 1 second. I threw out a tough opening sort of salvo to Jeanette about access to funding, and I'd also love to hear you on it after we introduce you. But
absolutely, and actually, you know what, Brian? I mean, this is what we're grappling with right now in the Nordics, and we can come on to the international mentoring program that I've set up and that we're running right now. But I think one of the most surprising facts for a lot of people is to hear what I'm about to say now, which is a mirror image, and in so many ways worse than the numbers that you just quoted. Yeah. So the Nordics are widely viewed and actually based on evidence around the world as highly digitalized, highly equal societies. Yeah. And it doesn't matter whether it's Denmark, Sweden, Norway, Finland, whatever. I mean, just take the Nordics. You can't generalize, but as a bloc, largely, we are highly advanced societies, highly digitalized societies, highly equal on so many levels. But sadly, and this is the shocker, we have a very low percentage of female entrepreneurs. And some of the countries in the Nordics, it won't be a show and tell this, but some of the countries in the Nordics are worse than the others. But largely, the Nordic countries perform poorly as far as female entrepreneurship is concerned, well below the OECD average. And that's, number one, a huge shock to a lot of people. And number two is something we must do something about, right? Because not only because the numbers are bad, but what this is ultimately about, this debate, is we are foregoing as individual talent, as countries, contributions to innovation, economic growth, jobs, equality, competitiveness, the whole shebang. Yeah. So it's not a number that this number is low and other countries are high. This is about individual talent, all these women that sit somewhere with a lot of talent and ideas and business potential and all of that, finding that they hit a wall, whatever they do. And access to capital is a very important part of this, to your question, Brian. But it's not the only part. You gotta have a chance to set it up and not be met with a brick wall when you start or want to grow a business. And so access to capital is one part of it, but it is by no means at all, right? So ultimately, and when I look at the agenda that you were throwing out, we talked about the other day, why is this agenda important? Well, actually, really, it's not actually really about women. What it's about is, we have a load of talent out there that's untapped. Why are we not using it? Why are we not giving everyone, whatever, black, white, yellow, red, male, female, whatever they are, why are we not giving everyone a chance to use the talent they have and build businesses and create innovation and growth and all of that stuff? We happen to be talking about women now, but it could be any diverse agenda.
Yes, absolutely. Right? Thea, I'm so glad you joined us, because what's so interesting about having you both on is you're both entrepreneurs, you're squarely in tech, but you came about it to your current career trajectories through entirely different routes, right? Jeanette, a little more corporate, IBM, government counsel, always in tech, where Thea, I want you to introduce yourself to everyone, but I was so fascinated that you had this humanitarian perspective. You spent all these years traveling countries focused on really compelling issues around refugees and other things. And you seem to have stumbled on a tech solution to an enormous global problem. So I'd love you to tell us a little bit about your work, how you got there, and then we can go at it. Welcome.
Of course, thank you so much, and apologize ahead of finding the right session. I think we're all adapting to virtual events. But yes, so my name is Thea. I'm the co-founder and CEO of a company called Diwala. My background is, as you said, started off in international development, more focused on both education and public health. I started that journey at age of 18 on the African continent, did that for 7 years. But why I ventured into tech was because my purpose is always trying to find the why to every problem and really dig into the practical of why are we in the setting that we're in right now. And that's what I did throughout these years when I studied. So I was in organizations that were on the ground and field work, trying to understand why is this problem existing. And while I was doing that, every time I was coming home, I was getting the question, what are you doing? Having the privilege of a Norwegian passport, I am not judged down to the same perception as if I would come from a different country. So what I experienced in seeing, like, basically proving what you have done throughout a series of time, if you've been migrating through a lot of different countries, which I have, is a huge challenge. So, and that understanding also for me, how I could verify everything that I've done was basically impossible, because the organizations was maybe locally on the ground or was huge, it wasn't corporate. But more than anything, I discovered also an issue throughout my master's by how do we make sure we safeguard also people's privacy and security. If you're living in government in situations that you're unable to have control of this information yourself. And then if you suddenly need to migrate somewhere, this is basically essential for you. It's your starting ground. And if you need to start from square zero every single time, you have a huge issue. And that's how basically the Diwala was started, around making sure it's easy to issue any kind of proof of skill, education, experience, anything, and then verifying that easily. And that's been now a 4-year-old journey. And I'm currently sitting in Uganda, and I've been here, throughout the pandemic.
Well, thank you and welcome. So I'll just ask, when you joined, we were talking about access to capital and how hard it is for female entrepreneurs in the United States to access VC capital. I'm wondering, since yours is a real example, I mean, you've created a tech company, how was that journey for you in accessing the support you needed, capital or otherwise?
So I think I've been very lucky in terms of being a female founder, because I got access to a great advisor, and I bootstrapped the company for the first 6 months prior to our first investment. But I had some brilliant advisors to advise me through the journey. But that being said, it has been extremely difficult, because what you being said is that basically funding is the most important thing you do as a CEO and as the founder. And that just such a huge distraction. But the problem with gender is that there's so much bias, ego, entitlement in the power imbalance of a startup when you need capital. So when as a female entrepreneur, sometimes you are told that you just get something because you look a certain way, or you're challenged upon your opportunity to do something, or me, like being blonde and a white woman, for instance, you're going down and saving Africa. There's a lot of judgment that can come forward, but I think the biggest one is just that, like, by data, Unconventional VC has released a report in 2019 that just in the Nordic countries, we received 2% of the VC funding, of the $2 billion that's been accessed. So it's and I've seen it through gazillions of pitching situations where different questions we need to prove to a greater extent, and more and more and more, and again and again and again. But also we just received smaller checks also, and we're kept in a different kind of funding round again and again and again. So I basically had, maybe throughout the past 4 years, I've had 2 to 3 months without being in the next funding round, or prepping for this funding round.
Jeanette, you worked with governments as have
Yeah.
I in New York City, with Mike Bloomberg, who is very focused on entrepreneurship, tech, supporting women. What role can government and should government be playing in these ecosystems? And are they a partner in your efforts?
Yeah, I think so. And actually, I just wanted, if I may, pick up on a point that you just made here, which takes me back to the program that we have launched in Tech Nordic Advocates, starting in Denmark. Yeah, so the international female founder in tech mentoring program. So that is about that very point that you made just now, Thea, which is access to the right kind of mentors and coaches. And there is absolutely no know-how, right? You've got to be made an entrepreneur, and it doesn't matter if you're a woman or a man or 12-year-old or 67 or black, white, yellow. It's unimportant. As an entrepreneur, you've got to have that kind of hunger to solve a problem and come up with a solution, and a fair amount of, as in London, I tend to sort of classify as pig-headedness, right? Which is that you don't take no for an answer, just go and do it and move all the obstacles out of the way to get there. Yeah. So that's really important. But access to experienced people, know-how, mentors, coaches, I think is absolutely fundamental. People who've been there, done that, got the T-shirt, who can, share some of their mistakes and experience and help you perhaps not repeat some of the mistakes that they have made, and not only mistakes, but actually, here's how you do things. And I think to your point, Brian, about where do governments come in, there's a whole raft of things that governments can do. And I can see one of the questions in the margin, which is what's the problem in the Nordics? Actually, that is another side of your question, Brian, about what governments can do. In some ways, we are a victim in the Nordics of our own success, in the sense that we are welfare state-driven societies. The public sector across the Nordics, give and take a few percentage points, is are a very, very large percentage of GDP. So a lot of women are in public sector jobs, and men, right? And men. So you're used to a salary coming in. You're not used to having to take risk. You're used to maternity pay. You're used to pension, holiday, all that stuff, right? So it's kind of a bit nice. So you might have an entrepreneur in your head or in your tummy. And then at the end of the day, it's not because there's some nasty old man out there telling you that you can't do it. You might just conclude, you know what, it's a bit risky. And since back to the biology, since, some of us have had children, it's a bit tough. And actually some of the Nordic countries have now introduced maternity pay for entrepreneurs. So that helps, right? So there's an infrastructural problem in the Nordics that about risk aversion, right? So that's where governments come in. How can you make it more attractive for women to actually go and use that talent that they inherently have, same as men, and not feel they can't risk it just because it is too risky, right? So that's where governments come in, recognizing that there's an infrastructural issue, and then it's also recognizing there's a skills issue. So one of the things that we are hearing at this program that we are running now, and which we are addressing, and a lot of studies have been done across the Nordics, and that's here, about what is it that stops you from becoming an entrepreneur. One of them is all the things I've just said about, inherent structural challenges. Another one is we tend to be more insecure than the guys. It's just the way it is. So studies show that we don't feel we have the right capabilities. So why don't we give the women the right capabilities, right? Because they have the talent, they might have the pig-headedness, but if they think back and think, I'm not good enough, well, why don't we train them, right? So that's where governments come in as well. So in our program, we have a massive big educational training program behind it to help these women, not because they're weak, just because they might, need some skills that you weren't born with, same as everyone else. So I think that's another thing for the government. And the third one is the big one, which, again, back to what you said, it's about advisory and coaching and mentoring, the know-how. And that's what is making a substantial difference in this program that we have running in the Nordics right now, is access to mentors, men, women, of whatever, lawyers, business, comms, some are politicians, some are whatever, who've been there, done that, can share their expertise and experience. That's important too.
Yeah, I think building on that, there can be many challenges in between that section, because even if you're working with government, you're getting governmental funding, right? The matching of private and public capital can be quite challenging in terms of reporting and the difference how you use capital, how you report, how you get it. In terms of access to experience and knowledge, it's critical. I would also say having focus of it. There's a lot of people that wants to give you advice, but sometimes it's more noise. And I will challenge more people, just put your money where your mouth is. I see a lot of these focusing being on female empowerment, building inclusion, diversity, and it's pure marketing gimmick. And I see less funds just putting that money where it's needed. And that money there, and making sure that you have funds, typically, and I would say this straight out, in terms of Black female entrepreneurs, for instance, they're at the lower bottom of the edge, having access to capital, and building in terms of also migration, like making sure there is specific funds if you're in that category. So having specific funds is actually needed, because you need that. You're always looking to fit into someone's portfolio, right? In that way, you also need to elevate portfolios that has the focus for driving female-owned businesses forward. Understanding that that's not just because it's goodwill, it's because it's for business profit. It's because we do perform excellent as well. I think then also there needs to be knowledge and training also in terms of the different cultural biases, which is culturally everywhere around that aspect, that it's not just like we're not helping someone up, we're just making sure there's capital for those kind of businesses also, because you're looking at a greater risk even if you're a different market.
I love that point about focusing on what people really need. I think so many corporations out there that I advise all the time are tripping over themselves to try to do something meaningful around gender equity, racial equality in this moment, especially in the United States right now. What's really needed is funding and giving people a shot, those who have not had access to capital, who have great ideas, as Jeanette said. I don't know if they're going to cut us off right at 1:30. This has gone so quick, but with a minute left, just because it's such a great story, and then we'll see if they turn us off. Could you explain the name Diwala? Because I've heard you speak about it, and it's kind of beautiful what the name means and how it came together.
For sure. Yeah. So Diwala comes from a culture that was called Hawala. Hawala is basically how you have different, when there wasn't banks in a system, people just wanted to trade and value between each other. You have an agent that you both trusted, so you were able to do the transaction together. Then these, like, just standing for digital identity, so building digital identity by trust. And here in Luganda and Northern areas, it also stands for independence. So it's just understanding that greater data that is trustworthy about you basically give you that independence, which should be key access for greater opportunities.
Can we make another before if we get cut off, Brian? Which is I can see there's somebody in the chat asking about is gender really an issue? Is it, and if the startup is thriving and numbers are showing, is gender still an issue? And yes, it is. And this is this whole concept of unconscious bias, isn't it? And I mean, my God, I've been part of any number of pitches in London in particular, where, you send in a pitch to an investor with a girl's name on and he gets rejected and the guy's name gets invited to pitch. I mean, my God, it's bad, right? But so what you've got to look at is what's the root of all of this. And a lot of the what's behind all of this, in us girls as well, we too suffer from unconscious bias. It's about having seen it before. We're all looking for comfort, right? So if investors, see a constant stream of high potential women founders with great businesses at whatever stage, and then they invest in one, it's good. They invest in another one, and a third one, and a fourth one, and a fifth one, because there's a constant funnel coming through. Then they get used to a lot of female founders coming up with great businesses, right? And then the women see role models of other great women that come up with fantastic businesses that get funding. So it's not because the guys are bad or evil necessarily. There's some unconscious bias about your founder, and you might go off and have a baby, and that's not good for the investor and all the rest of that. But, and so that's important. But what we've got to do is focus on unlocking all this potential. And that's what I said to the ladies on our program yesterday, when I said to them, I'm coming onto this talk. What I'm going to do is bang your drum. And so we've got to, I said to them yesterday, I have no idea where you guys have all been hiding. Where's all this stuff? Where have you been before? So now we opened up all this potential of incredible businesses that we are seeing on this program now. And there's a whole load of them. We had like 2.5, 3 times the number of applications for this program to the number of places. So all that tells us is there's a lot of potential out there. So you've got to open up that funnel. And the more we put into the funnel, the more useful stuff that comes out, the more investors see the potential, invest in the potential, see the return on investment, and then we are gradually going to change that, right? That's important.
I think I want to pick up on one thing that Päivi is mentioning here in terms of if the startup thriving and the numbers are showing, is gender really a key issue. The thing is, there's hidden challenges among being a female entrepreneur. Even for me, in pursuing business partnerships and things, I experience things where there's not really no intent to do business. There's an intent to do something different. This happens notoriously. Then you have a challenge of ego and entitlement, and will you go forward and just to make sure, there's certain things that's okay, but you still need the business opportunity. So it's great to you, even though the person has been inappropriate, it's okay. That's one aspect of it. The other aspect in terms of those cultural barriers is that it's so interlinked, everything that you do, that the expectation always is something that you meet everywhere, right? So in terms of women having access to capital, for instance, if you're looking at the Ugandan market, without being financially included, even having a bank account, even having those access, it's really important to think, okay, if you're in Western communities, that's one access. But if you're not even in ownership of your own bank accounts, where do you start? So there's so many different layers to this complexity, which is why also the first important thing that I think is important is always start within your own company. If things happen inside Diwala, I'm the first one to tell the guys saying hey, we have this issue. This happened, this is how we deal with it, to bring greater awareness to how something might be interpreted or feel also for a woman in a certain situation.
Yes. What were some of the biggest obstacles you faced?
Well, it's that there is sexual harassment. There is the instinct of saying, okay, we need certain, can we go for a drink instead of doing having that entitlement. I think I'm a very strong woman. In that way, I might be framed as a man, because I'm very direct. I can be very shortcut in these things. But I think one of the greatest challenges I was also experienced is women pushing other women down, which I think should be spoken about. Where women are they're so hard, they're the ones that hardest on me there. They're expecting much greater things also because there's certain competition to say you just got to push harder and harder if you're actually going to make it, because they know what's out there. So they do it out of goodwill and good heart. But what is reality is that you're also pushing other people down, some also in terms of jealousy. But I think women also need to be key active in pushing other women forward, and having that inclusion mindset and saying we're all great here if we all succeed,
Great. So I know that we are over time. Is there anything either one of you would like to say in closing as we see if anyone in the chat has any final questions?
Sure, go ahead, Jeanette.
No. Do you know? I just think that I think it's really this kind of debate is really important. It's so important. But I think it's also, and the whole sexism thing is extremely important here. There's no question about it, right? And it's out there. It's Nordics, it's UK, it's US, it's around the world in different forms. And I mean, let's be honest. I mean, we all had it in different ways, yeah. And you either learn to deal with it or you don't. In an ideal world, it wouldn't exist, but hey ho, it does. So over time, it might be reduced and so on. But it is there. It's bad news. But it is what it is. So we would just, I guess, in part have to learn to deal with it. But I think a lot of what this debate is about, and I sometimes, and it's quite interesting actually, through all my many years as a woman in tech, and a number of years I've sat in a meeting room in lots of different businesses as the only woman and all of that stuff. And you kind of become a bit like what you were saying, Thea, right? You get used to it all and you learn to navigate it. But I think ultimately what we really have to do now is to focus on this whole, we are all talented in different ways. There's a lot of talented entrepreneurs, and let's get the volume out there. Let's open this can of worms, all these women entrepreneurs that have been sat with the lids shut for all these years because for one reason or another they haven't been good enough or had the skills or been allowed to or could afford it or might have a baby or sexist boss or whatever it is. So what we got to do is to just try and help all these people, these women, or get out there, because the more of them we get out there, the more role models there are, where we can all start to mirror ourselves and say, look what she did it, so I can too. That's a really important part of it. And whatever what we can do together, all of us, to unlock that untapped potential, I think that will make a huge difference to all of us, to the women, to the investors that might have unconscious bias, to partners, to governments, to whatever. And that infrastructure support that I talked about before needs to be there. But I think if we can all help each other, open that can of extremely useful worms full of talent, then we can all, help it. I think that's where it comes up. Feed the funnel, right?
I love that.
I think one thing that I also want to say that's maybe a bit provocative is like I just want it to be more fair. Like, I'm not here as being a blue-eyed person saying this is a pretty beautiful world out there. There's challenges ahead, but like we just need to come to a stage where it's more fair for everyone. And that's about also understanding the complexities between the different genders, in like having pregnancy, knowing what challenges are actually out there and what you face, and just being blunt about that instead of hiding behind this blue-eyed world. Like it is what it is. Just like, let's face it forward and pull capital behind it and pull knowledge behind it, have mentors and people to support. Also, I know even having a female advisor that's been in that position is so critical at stage where you just because there's predominantly men also from the advisory point on my end. So, and that's also pushing other women forward. Like, even for me, knowing inside the team and everyone, it's about driving that kind of change.
I love that. And I think that's a really appropriate point for us to end, because I know we went over by 10 minutes.
Yeah.
But thank you both. It's provocative, really informative. And I trust our audience got a lot out of this. So thank you both. And keep doing what you're doing, creating opportunities for others. It's really exciting. I agree. Once we increase the aperture of that funnel, I think a lot of these things will go away.
Yeah. Absolutely, and thank you for being a champion for it all, and it is just all about couching in the right way. It's not about women are weak, they need help. It's there's a lot of untapped potential. Let's bring it to where it should be,
Yeah, I think I want to say that it's not a fight against each other. It's about like how we work together and understanding like there's men for women, women for like it's let's just move collectively forward is what I want to say.
Great. Yeah.
A good wish for the world on many levels right now. Well, thank you, those of you in the audience for joining us. Thank you, panelists. Everyone stay safe, and hopefully next time we could do this in person.
Hope so.
Yes. So. All right. Be well, everyone.
Bye, guys.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Brian.
Thank you.
Thank you, Thea. Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.